Okay, and I think we're live. This thing working? Okay, so while we're waiting here, I prepared a little something. Wait some more people to get in here. I happened to look at the Declaration of Independence, and I noticed that if you replace just a few words in it, you would no longer have a document that's dated. So I'm going to do a slight modification of the Declaration of Independence here. I only changed a few words. So while we were waiting, here is a slightly modified version of the Declaration of Independence. When in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal situation to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to separation. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive to these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundations on such principles and organization its powers in such form as they shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Prudence, indeed, will dictate that government long established should not be changed for light and transient causes, and according to all experience hath shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer while the evils are sufferable than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security. Such has been the patient sufferance of these states, and such is now the necessity which constrains them to alter their former systems of government. The history the history of the State of Israel is a history of repeated injuries and usurpations, all having in direct object the establishment of an absolute tyranny over these states. To prove this, let facts be submitted to a candid world. Israel has refused their assent to laws, the most wholesome and necessary for the public good. Israel has forbidden his governors to pass laws of immediate and pressing importance unless suspended in their operation till Israel's assent should be obtained. And when so suspended, the deep Jewish state has utterly neglected to attend to them. Israel has refused to pass other laws for the accommodation of large districts of people unless those people would relinquish the right of representation in their legislature, a right inestimable to them and formidable to tyrants only. Israel has called together legislative bodies at places unusual, such as the Wailing Wall, uh, uncomfortable and distant from depository of the public records. So meetings off the record, how the Patriot Act was passed behind closed doors, etc., for the sole purpose of fatiguing them into compliance with Israel's measures. Israel has killed elected representatives repeatedly for opposing with manly firmness his invasions on the rights of the people. Israel has endeavored to prevent the protection of these states, for that purpose, obstructing the laws for immigration and border enforcement, the state remaining in the meantime exposed to all the dangers of invasion from without and convulsions within. Israel having obstructed the administration of justice by refusing their assent to laws for establishing judiciary restraint. Israel has made judges dependent on their will alone for tenure of their offices and amount of payment of their salaries. Israel has erected a multitude of new offices and sent hither swarms of officers to harass our people and to eat out their substance. Israel has kept among us in times of peace a standing deep state army without the consent of our legislatures. Israel has affected to render the military independent and superior to civil power. Israel has combined without others to subject us to a jurisdiction foreign to our own constitution and unacknowledged by our laws, giving Israel's assent to their acts of pretended legislation, for quartering large bodies of Jewish terrorists among us, for protecting them by mock trial from punishment for any murders which they should commit on the inhabitants of the United States, for controlling our trade with all parts of the world, for imposing taxes on us without our consent, for depriving us, in many cases, of the benefit of trial by jury, for transporting us beyond seas to be tried for pretended offenses, Zundel, for abolishing the free system of English laws in neighboring Canada, establishing therein an arbitrary government and erasing its borders so as to render it at once an example and fit instrument for introducing the same absolute rule to these states, for taking away our charters, abolishing our most valuable laws, and altering fundamentally the forms of our governments, for buying off our legislator and declaring themselves invested with power to legislate for Israel in all cases whatsoever. For these reasons, Israel has abdicated government here, and by waging war against us. Israel has terrorized our seas, stolen our nuclear weapons, and taken down our towers and destroyed the lives of our people. Israel is at this time transporting large armies of foreign invaders to complete the works of death, desolation, and tyranny already begun with the circumstances and cruelty and perfidy scarcely paralleled in the most barbarous ages and totally unworthy of the head of civilized nation. Israel has constrained our fellow citizens, taken captive by indoctrination, to bear arms against their country, to become the executioners of their friends and brethren, or to fall themselves by their hands. Israel has excited domestic insurrections among us and has endeavored to bring in the inhabitants of the third world, the merciless border-jumping savages whose known rule of warfare is the undistinguished destruction of all ages, sexes, and conditions. In every stage of these oppressions, cucks have petitioned for redress in the most humble terms, and their repeated petitions have been answered only by repeated injury by this tribe, a people whose character is thus marked by every act which may define a tyrant is unfit to be the ruler of a free people. Nor have we been wanting in attentions to the Jews. We have warned them from time to time of attempts by their deep state to extend an unwarrantable jurisdiction over us. We have reminded them of the circumstances of our immigration and settlement here. We have appealed to their non-existent native justice and magnanimity. We have conjured them by the ties of our fellow whiteness to disavow these usurpations, which would inevitably interrupt our connections and correspondence. Censorship. They too have been deaf to the voice of justice and consanguinity. We must therefore acquiesce in the necessity which denounces our separation and hold them enemies in war. We, therefore, the future representatives of the United States of America, in General Congress assembled, appealing to the Supreme Judge of the world for the rectitude of our intentions, do in the name and in the authority of the good people of these states solemnly publish and declare that these United States are, and of right ought to be free and independent states, that they are absolved of all allegiances to Israel, and that all political connections between them and the state of Israel ought to be totally dissolved, and that as free and independent states, they have the full power to levy war, conclude peace, contract alliances, establish commerce, and do all of the other acts, things which independent states may of right do. And for the support of this declaration, with a firm reliance on the protection of the divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. So pardon me if I had some hiccups on the way. The language is a little bit 18th century, but I just replaced a few words there. That was a reading of the Declaration of Independence with very few alterations. It's time for the United States to again declare its independence from this time not from the British, but instead from the tyrannical foreign power that now controls us, from Israel. What did you guys think of that? I've got more that I've prepared here, but I think it's important to realize that the Declaration of Independence could be read again today with very few modifications and ring just as true as it did in 1776. So I'm going to move on here. We must declare this independence at the voting booth. And in 2020, I am the only man running who is willing to declare this independence. The man in the White House serves Israel first, and the United States only gets scraps from the table necessary to prevent certain demographics of Americans from awakening to the true nature of the problem facing this country. If you put America first, then Israel is your enemy, from which unconditional surrender must be sought for the acts of terrorism it has committed against our country. The man in the White House will never speak of the white community explicitly, the way he does of other communities. He wants a strong Jewish identity for his grandchildren, but only a sense of a lack of identity for the whites who voted him into office. He will never thank his white supporters the way he thanks his supporters of other races by name. Trump is just reading from the script that his Jews prepare for him. When he appears to be pushing hard, he's just walking up to the line in the stand that the Jews have drawn for him, so that whites will regain that same false sense of hope we gained by watching the last television actor in the White House, Ronald Reagan. He will never call the fake news what it is, Jewish. He will never call the deep state what it is, Jewish. He will never name the people who organized 9/11, Israelis and Jews. He will never address the true legacy of the African slave trade in this country. He will never intervene in the Jews' racket of projecting their crimes against humanity, such as the thousands of years of control of the slave trade, onto whites. Money that should be collected from Jews and given to their historical victims is instead fleeced from an unwilling Gentile society and shipped off to the terrorist state of Israel. And for this reason, I am announcing that I'll be challenging Donald Trump in 2020. And it is for this reason that I am announcing that I will be challenging Donald Trump in 2020. This can never be seen as a period in society when we all just decided to stop being so far left. If you keep giving lip service to the left versus right puppet show, you facilitate the keeping of the Jewish question from the common man's discussions by the water cooler on Mondays. Every man and woman in Washington knows who controls this country, and only those who are still unawakened, or those who fear the consequences of calling things by their true names, will still use terms such as left and right in lieu of terms such as Jew and Gentile. Ours will be known as the era in which Jews extended their control of our Ours will be known as the era in which Jews overextended their control of our institutions and through their folly caused their slaves, us, the Goyim, to rise up against their tyranny. This is the time when the Jews who run our countries realized that they were pushing their social engineering and ethnic cleansing projects too far, and that they might lose control of their societies they infect. We cannot facilitate the Jewish reentrenchment and a new set of narratives to replace the failing ones. The tyrants stand exposed on open ground, not yet having had time to dig new defensible positions, and now is the time to lean into them, to expel this hostile anti-American sickness from the body of Lady Liberty. Right now, the Jews are letting up on the pressure. Reality TV star Donald Trump is taking measures to slow down the loss of the white majority by a few weeks, which his proposed ending of birthright citizenship might do. If you are white and you vote for Trump in 2020, you are voting for your identity to be one of self-alienation and cuckoldry. If you are black and you vote for 2020, if you are black and you vote for Trump in 2020, you are voting to ensure that those who controlled the slave trade never have to pay reparations. If you are Asian and you vote for Trump, then you are voting for discrimination against your children to make room for Jews in good schools. If you're a Latino and you vote for Trump, you are voting to send your children off as mercenaries to die for Israel. If you're an American and you vote for Trump in 2020, you are voting to make not America great again, but to make Israel's death grip on your country permanent again. Citizens to elect little will begin soliciting donations from American citizens again soon, and I will not be accepting any help or hush money from Zionist billionaires like Adelson and the other pack of Jewish gangsters that formed the top contributors to Trump's efforts. God bless America, may she be free again, and God damn Israel. So that's what I had prepared in writing. I'm still working on my ability to read my own scripts, but yeah. So I'll read the comments a bit here. Yeah, so let's boil it down. I'm a little bit better at the off-the-cuff stuff. I'm not good at this whole trying to improv to make my own teleprompter like I did with that text document. But you can't allow Jews to continue to use this left versus right dichotomy. When you're talking about this country not being allowed to put its own interests first, it's not a matter of whether or not there's lefty or right-wing ideas. It's a matter of whether or not Jews control our institutions and our government. So when Tucker Carlson constantly tears into the left, if he's not implying a Jewish identity to the people who control that left, then it's all for naught. You can see quickly now that identity politics is becoming something applicable to whites as it's applicable to all groups. It's a tribal nature of man. There will always be identity politics. It's only through massive propaganda that a people will deny itself the right to participate in identity politics. When Tucker Carlson focuses on just trying to attack identity politics, what he's doing is he's not having any effect on the people that will engage in it regardless. He's not going to suddenly convince all of the different races of man to stop having identity politics. What he's trying to do is sell white people on not playing as team players at a board where everyone else is playing as if they're as part of a group. If you've ever played a game where it's a free-for-all and a few people band together, you'll realize that people playing as lone actors cannot hold up against even a small group. Yeah, New York Bad Boy says that Jew party, two-party system. Yeah, I agree. So in my speech that I had prepared there, which I don't think I did a very good job of reading, I talked about how Ronald Reagan was sent in to reassure Americans after the turbulence of the 60s and 70s that there was still a conservative America. All the time, things like chain migration were going on and amnesty for millions of foreign invaders happened. And today, whites have pretty much been ethnically cleansed from the state from which Reagan arose, which was California. And we have to say that we're done supporting television actors for presidency, because at times when the American public wants to be reassured, they keep on electing these actors that just are shills for Israel. And I'm now convinced that Trump is 100% controlled by the Jewish deep state. His inability to be critical of Israel, his inability to resist the Zionist lobby on going to war for Israel and bombing the neighbors of Israel, his inability to call the fake news Jewish, his inability to call out Jewish money, his inability to use anything other than what's the word? Euphemisms for the word Jew is really quite telling. It's not that hard just to say the word Jew, and Trump's unwillingness to use the word in a negative context, or even when it is proper to use it as a descriptor, is really quite telling. Trump is controlled by the Jewish deep state. Just like his spats that he had with Rosie O'Donnell, this is all controlled. This is a show. You remember when Trump and Rosie O'Donnell went at it, and then they were buddies, and they went at it, and then they were buddies. This is the same thing. This whole, the Democrats and the Republicans are mad at each other. Blue team, red team. Let's have this game here. And the whole time we're not talking about the people who are now retrenching themselves to make their power unchallenged. Anyone who spends their day talking about the left or the right doesn't really understand what's going on, or refuses to talk about the true nature of the political struggle, which is the struggle between Jew and Gentile. This small minority of tyrannical Jews has conditioned the population not to be able to discuss Jewish power objectively. And for this reason, Asians receive almost no seats at Harvard grad school, where 67% of the student body is Jewish. And nobody dares call it for what it is at Harvard, Jewish supremacism. Jews dominate the finance of our politicians, campaign contributions, political action committees. Jews dominate finance, banking, the media. And so long as people are calling them anything other than Jews, we're not going to solve this problem. This is a Jewish problem, the left problem, not the right problem. Let me take a look at some of your comments here. Yeah, Theater of Dreams points this out quite poignantly. Harvard is being sued, but they will say Jews are white. So the Jewish supremacist problem at Harvard will not be addressed because people are using the wrong terms. Instead of talking about 67% of the student body being Jewish at Harvard, the Asians are being conditioned to use the word white. And so when there's no dichotomy made between European and Jew, and when the Jews allow you to use a term other than Jew, you're not going to have any productive outcome. You have to use the word Jew. And Asians, really, a lot of you supported me, and but most Asians I talk to are afraid to say the word Jew in a negative context, and that's a huge problem. You're getting screwed almost as hard as the white people by these Jews. They're keeping you out of the colleges that you should be getting into based on merit. And when you're suing Harvard and you're not just using the word Jew in every other sentence to describe the problem at Harvard, you have no hope of making any seats for your children at Harvard, because I've got news for you. Whites were 70% of the top performing high school students last year, according to ACT, SET, and GPA. But we only made up 12% of the incoming class at Harvard. So if you allow the Jews to tell you that they'll free up some more seats from you, from white people, there are almost no seats to free up. White people are underrepresented by about 5, 6, so about 80% or 85%. We only have a few percentage of what our actual representation should be at Harvard. So unless you're willing to use the word Jew instead of the word left, you're not going to be able to have any effect on the political discourse. And the only people that Tucker is talking out of participating in identity politics are his audience, white people. So don't buy into it. Just a moment. Good. So don't buy into this whole left versus right thing. There's no such thing as the left. There's no such thing as the right. What do gun rights have to do with your stance on abortion? What does your stance on what is your stance on judicial restraint have to do with your beliefs about progressive versus regressive income taxes? There's this whole concept of left versus right. Tariffs and economic protectionism has nothing to do with gay marriage. The moment you refuse to take part in the left versus right dichotomy is the moment you can start having the discussion that needs to be had. Use the operative language that actually describes the terms that you're referring to. Use the word Jew. Please, for the love of God, stop using this whole radical left, all of this crap. You have to use the word Jew. You have to use the word Jew. Or just like the Asians trying to make seats for their children at Harvard that the Jews have all taken up, they're not going to make any progress. You have to use the right terminology. One Zed Army says, Pat, you need to read The Jews and Their Lies by Martin Luther. I already read it. It's a great book. So Mr. Galvanize says, I'm a paid shill provocateur. I can tell you one thing, I'm not making much money doing this, and I've actually cost myself quite a bit of money doing this. If you think that I was making less money as a network engineer than I'm making now, you're sorely mistaken. Anyhow, I've said what I've had to say. Just in summation, you have to name the Jew. Use the word Jew. Anytime someone uses the word left, call them out. Say, do you mean Jews? Anytime someone talks about neocons, which I guess technically is referred to as right, ask them, do you mean Jews? So don't let people get away with any word other than Jew when the right word to use is Jew. And when Trump thanks everyone except white people for their support, don't let him get away with that. Call him out. When he says traditional Americans, say, Trump, do you mean white people? When he says, thank you blacks, thank you Hispanics, thank you Asians, thank you Jews, say, what about the whites? We have a name. We're called white people. We are not a lack of identity. We have our own distinct identity. And so long as we're deprived of identity in politics, we're going to continue to get to be the mop with which the floor is cleaned. They're going to mop the floor with us. The real reason Jews have a problem with identity politics or any type of collectivism among whites is because Jews are the most collectivist group on the planet. They have a stronger sense of ethnocentricity and identity than any group on the planet. And they want us to be little fibers of wood instead of a bundled axe handle. The fasces stands in our government buildings because it's a symbol of what the power of people is when they are united. Divided, we're going to fall like chaff to these Jews. So Taro Rowley, you asked a question, my opinion on abortion. Let's deal with the Jewish question first, and then we'll deal with everything else. Really, all of our problems stem from the Jewish problem. So there's really no point in talking about anything else other than the Jewish control of this country. And I have a very good question from Natai. He's asked, do you see Chinese communists as a problem? And my answer is, I see the Jewish implementation of communism in China as a problem. 95% or 90% of the foreigners that helped with the communist revolution in China were Jews. And there are almost no Jews in China, meaning that the Jews went to China and started the communist revolution there. Let's see. And by the way, China is pretty nationalistic now. I would not call their economy nor their political ideology communist. I think it's communism in China today is pretty similar to what communism in 1980s Russia was. It was pretty much an officially Christian state with people going to church. It was transitioning to a market economy. So China is not communist. I mean, China is tyrannical, but it's not communist. Although I do think the Jews still have quite a bit of influence there. Henry Kissinger and the Jewish deep state were behind the transfer of the American factories and war protection ability from America to China. So the Chinese have definitely benefited from the Jewish destruction of the United States, but that doesn't mean that the Chinese are going to let the Jews steer their ship of state in the future. So Bruno makes a good point. If Pat was controlled ops, why is he not asking for violence? And that's right. Violence only gives the Jews what they want. Chaos. That's how they rule. The only violence we should see related to Jews is if they resist arrest, the violence they would commit against the police in resisting arrest. That's the only violence we want to see pertaining to Jews. Let's see. Oh yeah, so someone brings up the point, how do I still have a YouTube? To be honest, I have no clue how I still have a YouTube channel. This is a Jew-controlled platform. I have pictures of the CEO of this company along with its parent company standing with Benjamin Netanyahu. I mean, I have no idea. They've deleted 7 or 8 of my YouTube channels so far. Why this one is still up, why this account is allowed to exist after passing 200 or 300 followers, I have no idea. There's got to be a reason, but I don't understand it yet. So, Cow asks, have you read The Israeli Lobby of U.S. Foreign Policy? I have not read that yet, but I've read lots of similar materials. So Aaron Kaspernoff says, get in touch with Scott Roberts. I don't know who that is. Have him email me. So on the nature of political revolutions, when you're trying to do a peaceful one. So one of the reasons that the Jews hate the Russians so much is because they had a nearly full revolution without violence. What was achieved around the time period between Stalin and Khrushchev was the removal of most Jews, or most of the top Jews, from power in the Soviet Union. There were almost no Jews in top government positions after the 1950s. And the Jews don't like this because if they get a big war and an attempted revolution, they can crush and kill everyone that's challenging Jewish power. Whereas if you do it like the Russians did in the 40s and 50s, where you slowly remove the Jews from power, or, well, I don't advocate doing it slowly, but at least peacefully doing it, that's when the Jews can't cause the chaos they need to kill their political enemies. So Russia is case in point for peaceful revolution against Jewish tyranny, although Putin needs to name the Jew. I've read some disturbing things about his rise to power, him having been a Shabbos goy to Jews in St. Petersburg. I believe that's where he was vice governor. Basically, Putin rose to power through his affiliation with Jewish gangsters. And although I think he would like to name the Jew, I think he still kind of sees the paper tiger of Jewish power in this country. If Putin started naming the Jew tomorrow, just like if Trump started naming the Jew tomorrow, Jewish power in the whole world would be over. If either Putin or Trump just came out and started saying negative things that the Jews have earned, Jewish control in every country on the planet would be over. Either Trump or Putin, even if they didn't live to tell the tale a second time, either of them doing that would end Jewish power pretty much everywhere in this world. And why neither of them is doing that, I don't know. Yeah, Zero Cuck says there are Holocaust denial laws in Russia. So that is true. And that's one of the things that worries me. Now, I'm not one of those people that believes that most things are binary. Part of my maturation process growing up was accepting most things are analog or on a scale. Like from, in between green and blue is an infinite shade of intermediary colors. So whether or not Trump or Putin is controlled opposition for the Jews, it's a relative thing. It's not absolutes. It's not like binary in a computer, 0 or 1. So while the Russians were dismantling Bolshevism and getting ready to move away from a Soviet-style government towards a nationalist-style government, as they've achieved now, they did not speak very openly about the Jewish removal from power, because it would have triggered a nuclear war with the United States. If the Russians had said, we are liberating ourselves from the Jews, there would have been a pretext for causing a nuclear war with Russia, I think. So I hear a lot of people that are critical of Duginism and stuff, and I've looked into his work, and you have to understand what was achieved in Russia with nationalism, which, by the way, is going to stay Russian now thanks to their nationalism. They had to work with what they had. So Russia had a history of patriotism which involved fighting against Germany in World War II. At the time, Russia was communist, and Russia, actually, that's when Russia slowly started becoming nationalist again, is during World War II. This is also the time when Stalin was purging Jews from power. You couldn't just come out and say, okay, Jews did communism, therefore everything that our grandfathers fought for in World War II is bad, and our own grandfathers are traitors. No. So there was a tradition of patriotism which recognized the fighters from World War II as patriots. So Dugin had to work with what he had. So he had to leave trappings of nostalgia for the heroes of World War II and stuff for the Russian people. But you have to work with what you have. So, for example, once we recognize as a overall population of the United States that World War II and World War I were caused by Jewish bankers, and that Germany sought peace at all costs and refused to commit almost any of their economy to war production until a few months before the war, which you can prove by, you can look at economic records. The Germans put almost none of their GDP into war production until a few months before the war started. They were busy building homes for their people. And I see a lot of people calling me a leftist in the chat. There's no such thing as left. There's no such thing as right. Caring about your people and taking care of the poor is not left or right. Neither of those terms exist. It's nationalistic, and I'm a nationalist. So work with what you have. So let's say that we removed the Jews from power, essentially removed them from the media in this country, and we once again had a working media, a free and open press that was objective. It would rapidly become apparent that the Jews got us into both of the world wars. It would rapidly become apparent that the Jewish State Department is really just an extension of Israel in this country. It would become apparent that a lot of the wars we got into were staged by Jews to advance the interests of Israel or Jewish bankers. But my point is that you wouldn't then run on a political ticket vilifying the veterans of those wars. So in Russia, they're never going to be able to say World War II fighting for Russia is bad. So they'll never be able to fully reconcile their nationalistic history with the nationalist history of Germany. And that's fine. You don't have to see eye to eye on everything. But the point is that Russia has a lot of work to do today in the Jew naming department. And hopefully when the Jews are removed from power in this country, we can help liberate Russia from the last few holdouts in power, the Jews that are still in power in the Russian state now. So Russia needs liberation too. We need to give Putin the moral permission in this country to name the Jew fully in his. And he's already given us a few trappings of some proper Jew naming. He said, for example, the Bolshevik government was almost entirely Jewish. I believe he's talked about Jewish crimes against humanity that were committed in the Soviet Union. He's allowed the Orthodox Church to pretty much go full pogrom on the Jews regarding the ritualistic murders of the Tsar, the Romanov family. So it's like a left and a right leg. We need to take a step forward towards full Jew naming this country, and then hopefully other countries will step forward. And as we move forward a little bit, the rest will advance. But what we want is global Jew naming, global removal of the Jews from all governments, and expulsion to Madagascar. So Ain't Yo Goy Goy says, Russia is getting clobbered, or Russia got clobbered by the Jews. Yes, they got clobbered by the Jews in 1917. They got clobbered by the Jews again in the 30s, again in the 40s, because the Jews caused World War II. Russia got clobbered by the Jews again in the 1990s under the Russian oligarchs, these tyrants that controlled close to all of Russia's wealth, who all ran away to Israel, with the exception of one that ran away to the UK after Putin started cracking down on Jewish oligarchy. So, yeah, the Jews have crushed Russia a few times. But Russia is still getting clobbered by the Jews, by the way. You can't say that Russia right now is free of the Jewish tyrannical grip. And also, looking beyond just the Jews internally in Russia that have a lot of power still, the Jews in other countries are punishing the Russian people with massive economic sanctions. Russia right now, their economy is a fraction of what it would be if the Jews of the world weren't trying to destroy its people through economic starvation like they did to Iraq before they had us invaded for Israel, or like they're doing to Iran now. So never forget the economic warfare component. Blitz 777 says, "And the illegal Federal Reserve." Yes, only the Congress has the right to levy taxes and such. And these Jews and these private banks are levying taxes through inflation on us. And there are a bunch of other economic crimes happening under the guise of macroeconomics at these Federal Reserve banks. So, yeah. Fresh Air, did Jews do 9/11 and why? Simple, the Oded Yanan plan. Yes, the only people arrested in this country after 9/11 were Jews. And I mean, we caught them with vans covered in explosive residue. There's no question that Israel was the dominant partner in the 9/11 scheme. Yep. Of course, their lackeys in Saudi Arabia participated and provided some actors, so to say. So Capitan Kuna asked, Patrick, do you think that more people are aware of the Jews than, let's say, 5 or 10 years ago? Yeah. Most of the people I know that are savvy to the Jews have only been savvy for a year and a half, 2 years. It was really the 2016 primary where the Jewish deep state really exposed its face. If Trump is controlled opposition, the Jews must have had some sort of internal struggle. I think that a minority of Jews realized that Trump was necessary for stopping the loss of control of this country and by legitimizing the Jew party system again. And I think this was maybe 10 or 15% of the elite Jews in this country and abroad that supported Trump. And what we saw in the primary process with Trump versus Cruz was not Jew versus Gentile, but an internal struggle within the Jews. Breitbart Jews, for example, those Jews saw Trump as the way for retaining control of this country in the long term. So what we saw in 2016, those primaries, that was really just a battle between the Jewish elites. Trump would not have won the primary unless enough Jews had allowed him to. But in the process of the 80 or 85% of the Jews that were dead set against Trump, rebelling against those Jews who realized that there needed to be a steam valve or a release for white people, or else Jews would lose control of this country. In that battle between those two factions of Jews, they made mistakes that made Jewish tyranny in this country show its ugly face. So I would not have woken up if it were not for the internal dispute between Jews during the debate whether or not to allow Trump to win the Republican primary, which was an internal debate among Jews. Make no mistakes, Trump was allowed to win the Republican primary by a minority of Jews. So Oswald Mosley asks, what do you think of fascism? And I say, if you use the word fascism, you're going to get all sorts of you're going to trigger all sorts of Pavlovian conditioning in normies. So literally, fascism is just a representing of coming together and strength through unity, such as the bundling of sticks to form the handle for an axe, as we have in different government buildings in Washington, D.C. The fasces, or the symbol of fascism, is all over our country from its inception on. So this is an ancient concept. The Romans recognized it. It's an aspect of government. There's individual freedom versus authority. And there's a reason why it's not one solid steel pipe coming down to the girders on a bridge. It's a bundling of threads. There are properties that come from allowing a balance between individualism and collectivism. And the whole false Jewish absolute dichotomy of absolutes between individualism and collectivism is a false dichotomy, because organic societies are a mixture of the two concepts. There's a spectrum of individual freedom versus authority, and you can never be at either absolute end of the spectrum. Tanel88 says, thank you, Pravada. There are many woke goyim on Facebook. This is growing rapidly. Yeah. And the Jews shutting it down with the censorship, I think they're starting to realize that if they just shut everything down, it wakes up more people. When people realize they're not allowed to talk, they have to realize what they're not allowed to talk about. And that's a tool we can use to wake people up. I'm trying to figure out which message Pravada left that Tanel was responding to. Oh, you guys are having an internal discussion. Okay. So Mr. Galvanize, who asked me a shill question before, now asked, do you have no guilt about what you are potentially doing? The people you claim to represent, you are leading them into a trap. What guilt? How is naming a domestic and foreign enemy a trap? Your argument is not valid. The precepts are not sound. Mr. Galvanize, or I should call you Mr. Jew. This is just like blaming me for defending myself and going to jail for it like Cantwell did. Cantwell was attacked. There was a sham trial, and he pretty much had to sit in the hole. Cantwell did nothing wrong. So you're essentially asking me, why are you leading your people into a trap by getting them to address the issue that's threatening their prosperity and their liberty? Me naming the enemy who will give reprisal for that naming is not leading people into a trap. The Jews will always flip out when they're named, but me encouraging other people to make the Jews flip out by naming the Jew only strengthens our cause and our pursuit of liberty and our dedication to it. Jews rip their own masks off when you name them. They're going to count on a whole bunch of assumptions that are quickly becoming untrue, such as the assumption that it's immoral to criticize Jews. That's changing so quickly, and the more the Jews depend on these taboos from the 1960s and 70s, when they introduced their Holocaust propaganda, the quicker their fall from power will be. And a few Jews like Michael Savage have realized this. And Michael Savage is one of the most dangerous Jews out there because he's dynamic. He's been saying for years for Jews to get away from this whole Holocaust narrative. And actually, email me some timestamps on different Michael Savage shows where he's been instructing the Jewish community to stop pushing the whole Holocaust narrative, because even he is woke to the fact that Jews pushing this Holocaust stuff now is so hyperbolic that white people only wake up more from it. So the most dangerous Jews are the ones that are exercising self-restraint right now. The best Jews right now are the ones like Netanyahu and stuff that are putting the pedal to the metal as the Jewish international clique approaches the edge of the cliff. So Ancient Goy said, I bet Pat won but was cheated. Well, I tell you one thing, you don't go from 18% of the vote to 1% of the vote, and the winning number of votes doesn't go from 400,000 to 4 million from one midterm Senate primary to the next. I'm sorry, but Feinstein most certainly did not get 4 million votes. Nobody likes her. And in the Glendale area alone, I probably got more than 90,000 votes. So Andre Nikith, I don't know how to pronounce that. So he complains, you're complaining about, so you've said that Asians have overrun Sydney and Vancouver, and Canada, they have ruined the housing prices in many areas, and it wasn't Jews doing this. Well, I can tell you one thing. If I was from a country that was overpopulated and was poor, and where there were almost no opportunities compared to Canada or the United States, and Jews were holding open the door for me, I would take advantage of that. Never blame people that respond to incentive. Try and change the incentive structure or expose the people that are offering this incentive structure. You're getting angry at the pawns. Don't get angry at the pawns. They're human. They're obeying incentive, and that incentive led them to the United States of America. It's the Jews that held open the doors for mass migration, and you should focus the naming of people in this issue that you're pointing out strictly to the Jews, because the rest are just rational actors responding to incentive. Never get mad at people for being rational. Challenge the incentives that makes their rational behavior yield that behavior that you don't like, or yield that outcome you don't like. Yeah, so 6 Gorillion sea monkeys, and I love the name. The more you make fun of the Holocaust stuff, the more the Jews try and hide behind it, because they're not. Most of them aren't dynamic like Michael Savage. And when I say that, I'm not complimenting Michael Savage. Well, maybe I am, but I'm complimenting him in the way that you would compliment that Patton would compliment Rommel as a cunning enemy. We're relying on Jews to not be dynamic. And the more dynamic they become, the more them realize that they're only shooting themselves in the foot by being dogmatic and sticking to their old assumptions about Jews being above reproach. The harder they stick to this old stuff that isn't working anymore, the better. So the best thing we can do is not allow people to get tricked by the new Jewish narratives that are coming out, such as their narratives against identity politics, which are inalienable. Even if you had an ethnogenesis of a new race led by mixing of two new races, that new race would then practice group politics, just as the mix between the Aboriginals and Dutch, as they call them, the coloreds in South Africa. They call themselves that, actually. They have their own form of ethnic nationalism. There was an ethnogenesis, and those people, which is a new race, a specific mix of races, now practices group identity politics. So anyone that tells you that the problem is group politics is someone trying to get you to keep your eyes glued on the wall of the cave where the Jews are performing their shadow puppet show. Don't cheer for the red team. Don't cheer for the blue team. Don't cheer for Democrats. Don't cheer for Republicans. Cheer for Gentiles or cheer for Jews. Cheer for your own people and cooperate with other groups that are willing to cooperate against the true tyrants, the Jews. Patrick McBride says he's a fourth-generation Pittsburgh synagogue survivor. So ain't you goy? Some of these names are hard to read. Psychopaths and narcissists don't change, though. They will not rehabilitate or have remorse. They are insidious, and this is exactly what I'm counting on. This is what renders the Jews, once they have taken power in a country, to become inflexible. So Jews on their way to the rise to power, when they're doing their march through the institutions, or when they're becoming the tax collectors as they did in Schwabia, or when they're setting up their bank, they're willing to make concessions. They're willing to they're driven by the belief that they're chosen and they have the right to rule over other people, and the belief that all other people are inherently animal and are inherently their slaves. And on their rise up, they're dynamic. They hook and they jive and they dodge and they zigzag on their way up. And they're like water flowing through cracks in a dam. But once Jews achieve power, they always get expelled because they're not capable of creation or sustaining. They're only capable of subversion, which is very useful in a revolution. And everything the Jews do is based on that revolutionary spirit, as E. Michael Jones says. So do not underestimate the ability of the Jews to subvert, but I think we severely overestimate the Jews' ability to stay in power once they've achieved it. Their rise to power is sometimes slow, but their fall from power is usually very, very rapid. So count on them being inflexible. Now that they've achieved power, they've galvanized themselves in their current form, and they're not flexible. So challenging the Holocaust is something where it's productive for us, but unproductive for them. If Jews want to frame the arguments as they do so often to their advantage, that they should avoid talk of the Holocaust. But the thing is, they keep on bringing it up, and this is such a powerful tool for us. They're going to double down on it. So Ones at Army asked, Little Revolution. David Irving said, if the soldiers who stormed the beaches in Normandy in June 1944 could see England as it is today, they wouldn't have gone 40 yards up that beach. No, I agree. They would have actually gone back to England, turned the ships around, not landed on the beach, and arrested the Rothschilds and the other Zionist Jews that were causing these brother wars between Europeans that would otherwise be at peace. And brother wars, by the way, to me, doesn't just mean war between European-blooded people. To me, a brother war is any war between any group of non-Jews. Anytime Gentiles fight, anytime Arabs and Europeans, anytime Muslims and Christians fight, all that does is advance Jewish interests. So I'm going to extend the term brother war here to any war between any groups where it's non-Jews fighting non-Jews. I think people are a lot more peaceful without Jews in power than they are while Jews are inciting the peoples against each other. And to stop this, you have to remove Jews from power. Yeah, Blau says that little revolution. Remember, only Jew lives matter. So let's not talk about the farm murders happening in South Africa, because they're not Jews being murdered. Jews control all of the major assets and institutions in South Africa, as they have since the ANC took power. However, only the white people, non-Jews, are being stripped of their land and murdered. And this is calculated because the Jews are the ones providing the radio jamming equipment that are used on the raids onto the white properties to kill the white people there, because the Jews want the white people there dead, because on average they're genocidal maniacs, as they have been throughout history in the genocides they've committed, which is evident from time immemorial, as you can see from the Old Testament and their other writings. So Shekel Yeager says, would you ban circumcision? Yes. Child abuse is illegal. Genital mutilation should be illegal. When you turn 18, if you want to chop off a part of your anus or breasts or vagina or whatever, as long as you're paying for it yourself, I mean, what happens at the plastic surgeon is really your business. And if you're 18 or older, go ahead. And I'm sorry if I'm not getting to all of your questions here. I skip around and I have trouble keeping track of what I've already read and what I haven't. Yeah, Goblinstein Circumcision says that Little Revolution, you're correct. Enough with the division. Yeah, there's no reason why any non-Jews should be fighting with each other while Jews remain in control of all of our countries. NPC asks, do you think homosexuality rights is a Jewish subversion of Gentiles? Yes, anything that hurts reproductive rates in groups that the Jews have targeted for eradication is a form of Jewish subversion. That's a rule of thumb. So yes, and you notice that also the whites that are allowed into Harvard, of the 70% of the top performing high school students that are white, only 12% of the incoming class is Harvard is white, and you can guarantee that homosexuals and other people with perversions are greatly overrepresented. And this, so that the Jews can say, look, here's 12% of the student campus that's white, and your response to them should be, but they're all gay. Yeah, so it's a type of homosexuals tend not to serve their people. Homosexuals, they're not capable organically of having families, so they don't care about society because they have no stake in the game. They're not reproducing. They're not logical. I feel bad for gay people. I do not hate gay people, though. I mean, I don't hate schizophrenic people. I don't hate people who have depression. I don't hate people that are suffering from an illness. I think that hating homosexuals is really, it's victim blaming, because most homosexuals are that way because they were raped as children. Let's see. I certainly would oppose any type of persecution of homosexuals. I believe there should be government subsidized help for homosexuals that wish to get well again. And the same thing would apply for people that are kleptomaniacs or have any other type of disorder. I am social in my economics and in my policies. I believe the government should be there to help citizens that wish to self-improve and not hand out money to people that have come here to through some sort of Jewish incentive plan to replace the people who make up the traditional founding stock of this country. So Saeed Waib Asharabi says he hates gays. Well, that's fine. You're free to hate anyone you want. In this country, we have freedom. I'm just saying the most productive route to decreasing the rate of infection of homosexuality among children is to treat gays and help them recover if they want to. So, that can involve taking them to church or or whatever your religious institution is. But homosexuals need help. And I understand if you hate them, that's your right, but I don't think it's as productive as helping them. I don't, that doesn't mean leave your children alone with them. No, homosexuals are something like 40 or 50 times more likely to rape children than straight people. Now, let's see. Let's see. So I've been streaming for an hour. I have stuff to do. I had planned just to come and read the bit about the fake left and the fake right. I have stuff I need to do. It was good talking to you, Goyam. Good question session. I see that people with actual questions were speaking up here, and not just people having conversation amongst themselves. So that's good. I really enjoy it when there are good questions, and I got some really good questions about Russia and some other points on here. So thank you. I really appreciate when the chat is inquisitive. I've got to go do a bunch of stuff I was supposed to already have done today. Thanks for tuning in, and if you forgot to tune in earlier, or if you tuned in late, go back and read my rendition of the Declaration of Independence, where I changed out a few words. I essentially changed out the word British or King George for Israel and Jewish, and it makes a lot more sense in today's context. So have a good one. Remember, God bless America and goddamn Israel. Goodbye.